Let's go first up with Charlie Trump, who is a Republican from Morgan County and is chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Charlie, good to see you. How are you, sir?
Hoppy, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Glad to be here.
I want to talk about a couple of things that have gone through judiciary that are significant. However, I want to start with the press conference held by the governor yesterday at about 4:30, announcing that Moody's had downgraded West Virginia's bond rating, the third of three of the major rating agencies to downgrade West Virginia's bond rating, suggesting that West Virginia's finances are not in great shape. And when you have a lower bond rating, then the interest rate on money that's borrowed by government goes up. Your reaction to that announcement?
It's very sad news, Hoppy, and it highlights and illustrates why we have to make fundamental changes here in our fiscal house. And that's what we're trying to do.
There is a significant difference between what those fundamental changes are in the Republican majority's view and in the governor's view. The governor used that yesterday as really an avenue to again argue for his budget plan, which is $450 million in new taxes, not a bunch of cuts, and also his road plan, which he says would create jobs and economic development. So he used it to support his plan. You see it a different way.
We do. The governor's plan, Hoppy, on the budget, in our view, is in large degree more the same approach that we've been utilizing here in West Virginia for a long time that hasn't been working. In fact, that has led to credit downgrades and fiscal trouble. And we do have fiscal trouble. The governor's plan involves just more taxation and more spending. And our view of this is it's time to roll up our sleeves and do the really hard work of paring down this government.
And is that, I have to ask this every day until we get plans from the House and Senate, but we do expect plans from both bodies, from the Republican majorities, to do just that, to cut?
Yes, sir.
All right, you're going to do it.
That's my plan. That's what I want to do. I'm not on the Finance Committee, but I believe there's momentum for that in the majority caucus in both houses. The truth is, Hoppy, if you can't cut government a little bit when the state is broke, you're never going to cut it. You know, it's hard to tell people no. Politicians are all, people who want to tell everybody yes to everything, and spending included. But you have to do it. Now is the time to do it when we don't have money.
Charlie Trump is with us. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a Republican from Morgan County. Real quick before I get off the budget stuff, and I know the big Senate plan also is to put forward this massive tax reform deal, which would eliminate or phase out personal income tax, corporate income tax, the consumer sales tax, and replace it all with a consumption tax of up to 8%. Are you all on board on that? And how much of a risk is doing that when we're in this tight financial time?
Well, let me start by saying this. The definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting it to produce a different result the fifth time you do it. So my view, and I think our caucus's view, is it's time that we look at some bold initiatives that are outside the conventional box. We've looked at other states that have no income tax, and the 7 or 8 states that have no income tax are among the fastest growing economically. We don't think those two things are unrelated. That's not an accident. So how do we, and in fact, to his credit, this is something that Governor Justice mentioned in his speech the other night. So we're hoping that he's going to give it a serious look if we're able to do it. Now, we want to have good math, good numbers. So these proposals are being scored by a number of people. We've asked Cal County over at Marshall, John Deskins at WVU, both of whom have great credibility and expertise, to tell us both short-term and long-term what these would mean. We think long-term, for sure, these would accelerate growth, economic development, prosperity in the Mountain State for a broader number of people than just continuing with what we've been doing.
Charlie Trump is with us, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Let me go to a couple issues, Charlie, from Judiciary. One is Senate Bill 222, which I know Labor strongly opposes, and it deals with jobless benefits. It's correct me if I'm wrong, a disqualification of the ability to receive jobless benefits if you go on strike. Is that correct, or do you have a different view?
Nope, that's what it is. And be more specific, on jobless benefits, we're talking about unemployment compensation.
Okay.
So if you're an employee of a company and you lose your job, unemployment compensation exists. It's paid for by all the employers in West Virginia. It exists to ensure that for some period of time you have a bit of a safety net while you look for another job. This bill says something that I believe every West Virginian will agree with 100%. Now, that's a bold prediction.
That is.
But this bill says that if a worker goes on strike, voluntarily on strike, he's disqualified for unemployment benefits.
Why is that important to you?
It's important to me because the taxpayers, the people who pay money into the unemployment insurance fund, which is right now in a severely depleted state, Hoppy, because, as you know, we have higher than the average unemployment in the nation here. We've had high unemployment. Those funds have been utilized heavily because West Virginians have lost their jobs. But it's important because the people, the taxpayers, the people that pay into that fund should not be subsidizing a strike.
Charlie, the other side of that is, and I think some of this gets caught up in the language of the current law, is that, well, I didn't go on strike, I was locked out.
Oh.
We didn't reach an agreement and the company shut down and locked us out. And therefore, if I'm locked out, I can't go to work and I should be entitled to jobless benefits.
Our bill says clearly, absolutely clearly, and those who've said otherwise are either not understanding or misleading. Our bill distinguishes between a strike and a lockout, and it says clearly that if employees are locked out, they are eligible to apply for and receive unemployment benefits.
Charlie, can you accurately distinguish, because it gets, okay, the contract talks break down and then the workers don't show for work, but the gates are locked anyway. I mean, is it possible to differentiate?
If you're locking the gates and locking workers out, that's a lockout. If a worker shows up to work and says, I'm here to work, I'm ready to work, and his employer says, you're locked out, you're not working, or we've replaced you, then that worker is entitled to apply for benefits and receive them.
Okay, and that bill, I think, is up for passage in the Senate today, I believe.
I think that's right. We have it on the floor. We reported it from committee last week.
I think it's up for passage, I think, in the Senate today. Let me talk about one other real quick, and that is what's called medical monitoring. This is at the top of the heap for those who want more legal reform. And my understanding is, like right now in West Virginia, if there's a big class action lawsuit because of a chemical, let's say a chemical waste dump that was left behind, and in that litigation it is decided that, well, people have been exposed to this waste dump and they are entitled to medical monitoring, even if they show no ill health effects, just in case something goes up, and it certainly adds to the cost of that settlement. This would stop medical monitoring, is that correct?
It eliminates the cause of action that is just for medical monitoring. People who have injuries, people who contract a disease are entitled, as always, to file suits to recover for their medical expenses, their lost wages, their pain and suffering, future treatment if necessary. What this bill does is it says that if you have no injury and no disease, you have no claim until you do.
Until you do. Now, the argument, Charlie, on the other side of that is, let's take a scenario where there was a waste dump and I live near the waste dump, and there's a class action lawsuit and the company accepts responsibility for the waste dump, but there's no medical monitoring. But still, on doctor's advice, it's, you live near this for a long time, you probably should make regular stops to the doctor. So I go to the doctor for 10 or 15 years because I was advised to do so because I live next to this hazardous waste dump. Why should I, no fault of my own, that hazardous waste dump is there, why should I have to pay to go to the doctor to get checked when that's not my fault, that's somebody else's fault that I have to go to the doctor?
Well, there are people who suggest that, all of us should be going to the doctor every year to get checked for numbers of things. But the idea, Hoppy, is that if, to me, it's a cost-benefit analysis. What we're told is that because West Virginia is in a minority of states which allow this cause of action as we allow it, that it's a competition issue for us. It's one of the things that companies will look at or decide upon or factor in their decision-making process about whether they're willing to open or expand in West Virginia. So we will join the majority of states with this bill.
And that bill it's in committee or passed out of committee?
It came out of committee yesterday. The report will probably come to the floor today, and it'll be going through readings, probably ending sometime next week.
Got it. Charlie Trump, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican from Morgan County. Charlie, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Great being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.